Well, hi there, everybody, and welcome to Dome at Home, the Manitoba Museum's award-winning live planetarium astronomy thing. I'm your host, Scott Young, planetarium astronomer, and we're working with a brand new studio setup here. I really hope the audio is working. It looks like it is. Oh, Krish, nice to see you, and Gia, nice to see you as well. Lots of folks checking in on the chat. Always nice to see who's listening and where you're watching from. The museum folks love to see where we reach with this show, and it's surprising where we have fans all across the continent and around the world. It's great to see you all. It's been one of those springtime, wintertime, all those things that has blurred into one. I think today was winter number 5 for Winnipeg. We got another blast of freezing rain and snow after a couple of days of, positive temperatures. But that's weather here in Canada, and probably weather where everyone is. That's just the way weather works. You never know what you're going to get hit with. Today, we're going to be looking at the spring skies. It's officially spring. It is officially the time that the days are getting longer than the nights. We're getting more hours of sunset or of sunlight, pardon me. Sunset is happening later, not just because of the lengthening days, but also because of that daylight savings time thing that we do. So we won't get into that too much, but definitely great to see you all out there. And today we will be looking at, actually a whole bunch of things. We have, first of all, lots of cool space stuff to look at. We've got some great images to show. Now, most of us were clouded out for the lunar eclipse at the beginning of the month. We talked about it last month, did a preview. We were really hoping we'd get some images of it. Not so much. And so unfortunately, we don't have a lot of those, but our contributor from Texas, Krish, was down out with his dwarf telescope and doing some great images. So we'll take a look at some of those. And we will also look at the upcoming events of the celestial variety. There are potentially 2 comets that will be visible, although since the time I wrote the preview of the show and the time that I wrote the show, one of them has already started to fizzle. But still, comets are those sort of extra bits that'll pop into the sky and sometimes give you a good view. Sometimes they don't pan out, like so much in life. So let's get started here. We'll see if we can get all of the technology. Oh, look at that. Okay. I hope the camera looks better, and I hope the audio sounds better, because we have new everything in the Dome at Home studio, which is here in Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And hopefully it sounds good. All right. Oh, Ben, nice to see you guys. Great. Oh, and Stan from North Kildonan. It seems so far away. Rose, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. And Neil, excellent. Oh, Rihanna. Oh, my former coworker Rihanna, who's gone off to do school and things like that. Nice to see you. Thanks for tuning in. It's like old times we're getting the band back together, right? Okay, let's take a look at some of your images. And remember, we love to see images from different people in terms of what you're doing. If you go out and take a picture of something, it doesn't have to be like super high quality. It can just be something that you saw and has a story to it. Or it can be super high quality, anything in between. But we love to see your images. You can send them to me through any of the social media channels that you're watching on, or you can always hit us up at space@manitobamuseum.ca. That's our email address, and that can take some pretty good size attachments. So if you have a big image, that's the way to do it. And there we go. We've got our PowerPoint up. So Krish has been watching the show for, years, I guess. He's one of our most southerly viewers, I think, down in Houston. And look, he did a little bit of vacationing, and he got some great shots. This one was my favorite, though, because it's sort of, you're taking images of celestial events. You're looking at the moon, and then suddenly you get the contrails of an aircraft go right across, and just sort of juxtaposes. Those contrails are about 384,000 kilometers closer to us than the moon, and yet they perfectly lined up, telescope, contrail, and the moon all in one spot. Nice job. And actually, even without the contrails. That's a great shot of the moon. I mean, look at the detail on that, the sharpness around the craters and things like that. Beautiful view. We know someone that will be getting a beautiful view of the moon a little later, in just about a week or so, a little bit more than a week. We'll talk about that later. But I've been watching the moon particularly because usually it's one of those things I sort of, I pass on because you can see it anytime. But right now with the upcoming moon mission, it does seem a little more interesting to look at. Oh, hey, Janet, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. And Audrey and Bodie, nice to see you as well. 4 years old, loves space. Perfect. That's the age to start, man. Great stuff. Yeah, let us take a look at another shot here. Let's see what we got. So this is a completely different kind of image. Same telescope, though, which is kind of amazing. Normally, telescopes are kind of, they're like camera lenses. They're good for one type of target, but maybe not another type of target. Krish has gotten some great wide field views of the moon there. And now here we've got to zoom in on 3 galaxies. These are the Leo trio of galaxies. We've talked about these in previous spring shows. They're some of the brighter galaxies in the spring sky. You need a telescope or a camera to see them. But the 2 on the left, M65 and M66, fit together in a telescope field of view. M stands for Messier. Messier is the comet hunter, French comet hunter in the 1700s who was trying to discover comets, kept finding these boring things that didn't move and he didn't get to name, and so he kept a catalog of them, and they turned out to be galaxies and star clusters and all sorts of other really impressive things. We forget about his comets nowadays, but we remember him for his Messier list. And right next to that, just off on the edge of the frame, and this is where you wish you had just a little bit of adjustment on the thing, is to be able to catch that other galaxy, NGC 3628. And NGC doesn't stand for 3 comet hunters or anything like that. NGC is the new general catalog, thousands of things in the sky. Basically, if you have a big telescope, the NGC catalog is sort of your target list, and there are literally thousands and thousands of objects in there. So that would keep you busy for a while. Great shots and 5-hour exposure. Now here's another galaxy. This one's sort of a little bit more, I guess, a little bit more isolated, but it's also a crop of the image. This isn't the full frame here, but another 4 hours worth of exposure. So you set your telescope up and it's tracking the stars and it's taking 2-minute exposures over and over and over again, and then you stack them all up. You get this amazing picture. M64, the previous one in the series from the other 2, and it's nicknamed the Black Eye Galaxy because of the big dust band there, and that's an opaque cloud of dust that is blocking the light from the stars behind. So small telescopes, cameras, a little bit of time, a little bit of expertise, come out with these amazing images just from your backyard. Great job, Chris. And thanks for sharing all your images. I love seeing some of the stuff that comes in. And I saved a few of them for the next show, just in case we don't get as many again. But thank you again for contributing. Maybe there's one more. Oh yeah, one more here. Now, when we talked about the March sky last month, I flagged the fact that Venus was coming back into the sky, and we'd have a thin crescent moon joining it on the 19th and 20th. I didn't see many people that saw it on the 19th because the moon was very, very thin and very, very low. But here's a great shot on the 20th. And you can see from the silhouettes of the trees there that you have slightly better weather than us right now, Krish, because our trees are still bare and today covered with ice. So great stuff. And this is all with the same telescope, which sort of blows me away. Like, you can shoot wide field, you can zoom in, you can take snapshots, you can take all sorts of long exposures. Very, very versatile. So really, really cool stuff. Thank you very much. And another regular contributor here, Gia, who's out there in the audience, I think. Gia is famous for her Milky Way shots, and she sent me this image with the description of the first Milky Way of the season. You got to get up really early in the morning if you want to see it. It's just rising before sunrise. She shoots very wide field. I think this is a couple of frames put together, and so I had to sort of do a little bit of a pan and scan to fit it all in. But the Milky Way there, just beautiful. And then a little clouds and stuff along the horizon, some lighting and stuff like that. But the beginning, when you see the Milky Way rising like this, you know that summer's coming, because Milky Way is a big summer thing, and that really is a great indicator that we're going through the seasons. Again, you can always send us your images, space@manitobamuseum.ca, or you can send us through all of the various social medias wherever you're watching the show. All right, let us move on here, and we're going to switch over, and I'm just keeping my eye on the chat here. Make sure we got everybody. Yeah. Let's see. We will switch over to our favorite free planetarium software, Stellarium. This is our view of the sky right now, and at least here in Manitoba. And the little thing in the crosshairs there is not the sun, it's actually the moon, because we are in just a little bit past the first quarter phase of the moon, so we've got a nice view of the moon here. This is a perfect time to look at the moon, because these are the lunar Apennine Mountains. These are massive mountains that go up, 12, 13,000 feet above the crater below them. And they just cast these beautiful shadows at this point, just because the sun's catching it just at the right angle. And then also along here on the southern hemisphere of the moon, there's all these craters that are just cast in relief with the shadows. Beautiful, beautiful time to look at the moon. And you don't even need to wait until it gets dark. You can go out anytime, because the first quarter moon is visible basically all afternoon and into the evening, right up until sunset, and then for a few hours afterwards. So you've got a good chance to view the moon in more convenient times. And so that, of course, will be dominating the sky for the next little while. But we're going to just move over to our west here, and we'll let the sun go down a little bit. Actually, we'll just make the sun go down very quickly. And I'm going to fast forward to, right about 8 o'clock or so. And right about 8 o'clock, right at the end of the show, if you go outside and look west, spot the brightest star in the evening sky, and it's not actually a star, that is the planet Venus. And I think, so it's the brightest object in the sky other than the sun and the moon. So maybe that's one reason they named it after the goddess of beauty. But I think it's also because it's always visible close to the sun. So we always see it up against the beautiful twilight colors of the sunrise, or just in the sun or sunset. So you won't see it, usually up against a very dark sky. Venus is visible for the next several months, but it stays fairly low. So if here we have 8 o'clock, if we fast forward to 9 o'clock, well, Venus is already starting to set. So you really only have an hour or so to catch it in the sky. But it is the brightest thing in the sky. We're already getting UFO reports of, this bright light followed me home from work and that kind of stuff. So keep your eyes open for that. And if people are reporting that light in the sky, well, now you know what it is. If we zoom out a little bit, and actually we'll keep the time here. I went back to 8 o'clock. There's our moon way up there. You might notice that beside the moon tonight, there's another bright object. And that bright object is the planet Jupiter. We've been watching Jupiter for months now. It's been in the sky since last fall, basically. And it came to its best in the early winter, and it's now moved into the evening sky. We can still see it till midnight or 1 in the morning or so, but it is the second brightest thing in the sky after the sun and the moon and Venus. So right now we have the two brightest planets easily placed in the evening sky. You don't have to stay up late or anything. And Jupiter, of course, is so interesting because it has a series of moons. Well, it's interesting for many dozens of reasons, but it has a set of moons that go around it. 4 of those moons are bright enough to see in binoculars. So here we actually have these big circles are representing how bright these objects are compared to these other stars. These other little things here, these are just stars in the background. You probably wouldn't even notice. But you might notice, if we zoom right in, there's a little black spot right there on Jupiter. That's actually the shadow cast by this moon over here, because the sun, if we zoom out, the sun is way off to the right here in this view, way over there across the sky. And so the light is coming in from there, and the shadow of that one moon there, and let's just see which one that one is. Oh, it's not telling me the name. Okay. Well, it's casting its shadow right on there. And if we lock in on this so that we can track it, if I step forward minute by minute, we'll actually see that shadow move, and then in fact the planet itself rotating. Eventually the shadow will pop off the planet around 8:25. Now unfortunately you need a telescope to see that kind of stuff. You're in luck though, because tonight after the show I plan to set up the telescope and do a little bit of live streaming on my Scott the Skywatcher page, and so you can come and join me there if you want. After I'll go and set up and get things ready. Probably about 9 o'clock we'll do some streaming there. We'll try and take a look at Jupiter, and we'll definitely take a look at the moon. So those are the bright highlights in the early evening right now. If we zoom way out here again, you've got Venus in the west, you've got Jupiter and the moon high up in the south. The moon, of course, will move on in its path around the sky. It takes a month to go around, and so by tomorrow the moon's way away from Jupiter, and by the 28th it's even farther away, and it'll move across the sky. But let's let it get a little darker here. Let's go to, say, 9 o'clock. Here we have 9 o'clock, and now we can... I'm actually just going to move the moon out of the way. We'll just jump forward to the very beginning of April here. Here we've got our last chance to see those winter constellations. Even though it's already spring, astronomically speaking, we've got the constellations of winter still there, about to set into the sunset. So if we turn on some of the lines here, we've got Orion the Hunter, probably the most best known of the constellations of winter, the 3 stars of his belt here. The bright red giant star Betelgeuse up here, and then the bright supergiant blue star Rigel down here. Kind of has like an hourglass figure. I'm envious. Nearby, if you follow the belt stars of Orion, they sort of point down to this bright star over here. This is the third brightest thing in the sky. After Venus and Jupiter, we come to Sirius. This is actually a star. It's one of the closest stars to us, so it appears really, really bright. And that's something that you'll see. Now, this is something that's kind of interesting. If you look at Sirius in the real sky, you'll see it flashing blue and red and green, especially if you're looking over top of your neighbor's house or someplace where there's heat waves rising. The colors of the starlight usually blend together and make white, but when you have the starlight going through turbulent air, the colors split kind of like a rainbow, and you get this beautiful twinkling effect. And the colors really show up with Sirius, and at this time of the year, it's down low in the evening, and so it gets reported a lot. Venus doesn't twinkle like that. And the reason's sort of counterintuitive, but Venus actually is not a point in the sky. Stars are so far away that they're literally just little pinpricks. We can't resolve the size of them. But Venus, even though it looks like a dot to your eye, in a telescope is actually got some size to it. And all of the light from that disk of the planet, the twinkling sort of averages itself out. So the twinkle from the top part of the planet might be a little green, but the one at the bottom might be a little bit red, and it all just sort of blurs together in our eyes. And so planets don't really twinkle. And so that's one way to sort of tell if you're looking at something that is a planet or a star. Now, there's exceptions, there's edge cases, there's all that kind of stuff. But as a general rule, if you're looking at a bright star and it's twinkling like mad, it's probably a star. If you're looking at a bright star and it's not twinkling, it's probably one of the planets. So you can watch for that. Even though I know that it's just atmospheric turbulence, watching the beautiful colors of Saturn twinkle, or of Sirius twinkling in the sky, is it's a beautiful sight. So definitely try and check it out. Let's see, we have lots of other constellations and lots of other bright stars here. We've talked about Gemini, the twins, the constellation that has our friend Jupiter in it right now. Taurus, the bull, is over here, and Taurus is got sort of a little V-shaped group of stars right here. And then the Pleiades, or the Seven Sisters, is right beside it. That's worth a zoom in. If you've got binoculars, zoom in, and you'll see that both the face of Taurus here is a nice little star cluster, and the Pleiades, or the Seven Sisters, is also a beautiful little star cluster. In some of the Cree stories, this is the Hole in the Sky constellation. That's, where humanity came down from the spirit world on a spider thread and became part of the mortal world here. Almost every culture that can see the Pleiades has some significant story about it because it's just such a distinctive object. If you've got good vision, it looks like a tiny little dipper shape. If, like me, you have astigmatism or bad vision, it looks just like a little fuzzy blob. And if you look right at it, sometimes it disappears. But if you look off to the side a little bit, you get a better view. That's just the way our eyes work. So watch for that. And again, if you have just ordinary household binoculars, that would be great. That'll give you all you need to see a great view of those two star clusters in the sky. Oh, Forest family, hey, nice to see you guys. Been a little while. It's great to see you again. Your theme song is still playing, as you know. We opened the show with the song that you guys wrote for us. How long ago was that? That was gotta be 2 or 3 years anyway. We'll have to talk. I wonder what other songs you guys have written. All right, let's move on a little bit here, and we're going to swing over to the southern part of the sky. And the southern part of the sky is where we're sort of transitioning. We've got the winter stars on the right, and then the spring stars on the left. And if we zoom out a bit, you'll notice there's a lot of bright stars in this winter sky. Like, all of these stars are all really bright. In the spring sky, not so much. I mean, if I turn off these little red lines here, there's just not nearly as many. The winter sky has lots of bright stars. That's just sort of the organization of the sky, essentially. And in the spring stars, they just don't stand out as much, and the constellations just aren't as distinctive. It does take a bit of practice to find some of these. However, spring is the very best time to find the Big Dipper. We'll zoom this around here. The Big Dipper is pretty high up in the northeast, and as the night goes on, it basically swings right overhead. So even if you live in a place where there's trees around or apartment buildings or things like that, if you can look straight up, you can see the Big Dipper at this time of the year. Right. This month, we'd have to wait till, say, 11:30 or so. It gets very close to this little green mark, the zenith. That's the point right overhead on our star map here. And of course, the Big Dipper, these 7 stars here that look like, a dipper, but nobody uses dippers anymore. So it looks like a big frying pan with a curved handle to me. Friend and colleague of mine, Wilfred Buck, has taught us that the 7 stars of the Big Dipper represent Misti Musqua, which is the Great Bear in the Cree sky tellings. And it's kind of amazing that, you had people separated by thousands of years and thousands of kilometers, and they both named it the bear, because the ancient Greeks and Romans also called this a bear. Now, I have to say, I'll show you the Greek and Roman one here. Let's just see what we can do here. So this is, remember, it's upside down, but this is the Great Bear according to the Greeks and Romans. Let's get some artwork up there. This artwork it kind of looks like a bear, except for this long bushy tail. I've seen other ones where it actually looks more like a weasel or maybe some kind of feral chipmunk or something like that. I'm not convinced that the ancient Greeks saw a lot of bears, maybe, when they were doing their constellation dot to dots. It's certainly not anatomically correct, but for some reason, it was assigned as a bear from many peoples around the world. And some of that may have been shared knowledge, but a lot of it was also independent ideas. So I wonder what it was that made people think that this was a bear. I always actually think, here, we'll spin it around a little bit. Give me a second. I always think, I'll turn off the picture, it kind of looks like the Loch Ness Monster. Like, here's the nose, and here's its long neck, and here's its body with a tail, and these are like the flippers. It's like one of those plesiosaurs that they have in the museum. That's what it looks like to me. You can make up your own constellations. They're every bit as valid as everybody else. Yeah, the feral chipmunk, that's a keeper, yeah. Hey, Bob, nice to see you. Bob and I went to high school together just last year, I think we graduated, right? Yeah. Yeah, nice to see you. Let's see. Lots of constellations. I'm going to show just a couple quick ones before we move on to some of our other things. Things are going fairly well here. So the Big Dipper. We often use the Big Dipper to find different things in the sky. Here, I'll flip us around again. Sorry, and I'm trying not to make you dizzy, but if you're facing the north, the stars in the Big Dipper, the ones right in the handle here, I start here 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7. Those are the stars of the Big Dipper. Star number 6 and star number 7, those are the pointer stars because they point right to the North Star. That's the North Star. And so directly below the North Star on the horizon is true north. So that's how you find your directions at night. And that's sort of the most famous example of what we call star hopping. You find something in the sky that you already know, and then you use the lines or you use them to point to other things, and you hop across the sky to something else. So there's our North Star. I'll flip back over so we're looking towards the east again. That kind of puts the Big Dipper on its side, but that's actually pretty realistic for this time of the year. The handle of the Big Dipper has a couple of useful things in it. First of all, if we zoom in, here we go. Here's the handle of the Big Dipper. The one where there's a bend here, where the handle sort of really bends, is actually 2 stars. There's a bright star here, and there's a little one over here. This is called Mizar and Alcor, or the horse and rider. And this was used as a test of vision. If you look at those, if I look at those stars, I just see one blob. But if you have good vision and you look there, you'll actually be able to see the 2 stars separate because they just happen to be separated by roughly the amount of resolution that you need if you have good vision, or that you have if you have good vision. So that's a good way to check your eyes. I still recommend an optometrist for a full test, but it's a good first attempt. The curve of the handle there, where that star is also useful. If you think of this sort of as an arc, you can follow the arc, and it will sort of curve across the sky to a bright star over here. I mean, you really have to use your imagination a bit, but luckily the target is one of the brighter stars in the sky. We follow the arc to Arcturus, and that's the mnemonic you can use to remember it. Arcturus is one of the brightest stars in the northern hemisphere. It's the brightest star in the spring sky, and it's part of the constellation of Boötes. So this is the constellation of Boötes. To me, it kind of looks like a necktie with the part that you put around your neck here. Some people say it looks like a kite. Nobody says it looks like a herdsman, but that's what it's supposed to be. Yeah, okay, whatever. Actually, for me, it's more like an ice cream cone. There's a nice triangular ice cream cone here, a big blob of ice cream on top. That's a nice spring kind of thing, right? And so it's a spring constellation. That's what comes to mind for me. And Arcturus is the bottom of the cone, just where the thing always breaks and the ice cream starts to leak out. So you can look for the ice cream cone in the sky over in the east. There's other stars here that we're going to point out. We'll go way back to our Big Dipper. And we're kind of using a very wide field view here, and you're probably not watching me on a planetarium dome. You're probably watching me on some kind of flat screen. So when you get out under the real sky, it will make a lot more sense. So you really do want to get out under the real sky and try and find some of these things. It makes much more sense when you're out there. But you find the Big Dipper. Imagine if the Big Dipper had water in it, and then imagine there was a hole in the bottom here. All that water would just sort of pour out and go all the way down to hit Leo the Lion. This is Leo the Lion. Famous constellation because it's one of the constellations of the zodiac, the horoscope signs. Those ones got picked because those are the constellations that the planets move through. Now, right now, there is no major planet in the constellation of Leo, but in a couple of years, Jupiter over here will actually move over here to Cancer the Crab, and then the next year it'll move over into Leo. So we'll eventually see a planet over in Leo the Lion here. When I look at this in the sky, I mean, sure, there's lines connecting it, but I see it as two different things. There's like this backwards question mark or sickle shape with a pretty bright star at the bottom. And then there's a triangle. And those two shapes actually make a lot of sense on their own. They stand out in the real sky. And then if you want to use the lines and connect them and turn them into Leo the Lion, yeah, I could see this is like the nose and sort of the head of the cat, and then the body, maybe it's lying down, or maybe it's like the Sphinx. Some people say it looks kind of like the Sphinx. Now those galaxies that Krish took pictures of are right in about here. Now you need a telescope to see them, maybe big binoculars. Ulrika, maybe that's a challenge for you to take a look at and see if you can track those galaxies down with your big binoculars. But that's definitely a challenge for a small set of binoculars. But it's right in the back legs of Leo the Lion. In fact, I think I can just turn that on. There they are right there. M65, M66, and NGC, blah, 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 blah. And there they are. So that's a beautiful spot to point your telescope if you have the ability to do that. And there's actually other galaxies scattered all throughout Leo the Lion. But most of the galaxies are actually next door in Virgo, the Maiden. This is the zodiac constellation of Virgo. As usual, it looks exactly like what you'd expect it to look like. I don't know. But from the tail of Leo down into Virgo, this area here is called the Virgo cluster of galaxies, because in this direction, we're not looking into our own Milky Way galaxy, you know, the big round pizza-shaped disk of stars that our solar system is part of, 400 billion stars in a big spiral that's pretty flat. We're actually looking up out of the pizza off into intergalactic space. And that's why there's only a few stars in this area. There's not as many bright ones. We're looking out through the thin part of the galaxy. And as we look into the thicker part of the galaxy, or as we look into that area, we see that this area is full of galaxies. And as I zoom in, they show me more and more galaxies. You can point your telescope and even binoculars into this area and spot a whole bunch of galaxies, sometimes 3 or 4 in the same field of view. This is galaxy season for astronomers that have good-sized telescopes or are doing imaging, and it's a great spot to explore and look for galaxies. Each galaxy, of course, is hundreds of billions of suns, and it's got how many planets or things like that. Oh, Ulrich, you think you did find the Leo galaxies? Oh yeah, okay, that's great. Maybe let's. I've been trying to get Ulrich on for a couple of times. We've been working on technical issues and things like that, and so now that I've got the studio working and everything seems to be working fine, I think we can bring her back because, of course, her binocular challenge segment is one of the most requested parts of the show. So we want to bring that back to you as soon as we can. Okay. So, spring constellations, Big Dipper, Arc to Arcturus. The Big Dipper dribbles down onto Leo the Lion. And then if you sort of make a square with those 4, Virgo is sort of over here. There is one star in there, Spica, that is relatively bright. Some people will follow the Arc to Arcturus and then speed on to Spica. But that's a pretty big extrapolation across like half the sky. So I don't always get to it. But there's not much else in that part of the sky that's bright. So you'll probably be able to spot that. And of course, there's lots of other constellations that are of major importance, like Corvus the Crow over here. Here we have Bernice's Hare. Here's one of my favorites. Here's the hunting dogs. Those 2 stars represents not 1, but 2 hunting dogs chasing the big bear. Constellations. It's a good gig if you can get it, I guess. But once we get past those, we're wandering into summer territory again. So we're going to leave those for a future show. But I do want to just go back to the morning, a view of the morning sky. So let's see, we're at about 11 o'clock here right now. We're just going to fast forward a little bit more, and I'm going to set the date properly. Let's see here. So in the morning sky, if you get up really early in the morning, you're actually looking a whole season ahead. You get a preview. So if you want to see the summer sky in the spring, it's easy. You just get up at 4 in the morning, like Gia did, to shoot the Milky Way. The Milky Way goes sort of right through here, and so at 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning, you get a decent view of it. That's where you're going to want to go to see some our next discussion point, a comet. But I just see Ben's commenting. I don't see Facebook messages sent to YouTube. Okay, so I'm looking on YouTube, and I do see all of the messages that I saw. And then on Facebook, oh, you're right. They don't seem to all be bouncing back and forth. That's something from my chat. They're all showing up in my chat program, which is supposed to take anything that someone posts in any of our social media should get copied to all of them, and then the answers should also get copied to all of them. But I'm not sure why that isn't working. Sorry about that, Ben. Let's see. Most of the discussion seems to be happening. Well, there's a lot on YouTube, yeah, but they're not bouncing to Facebook. I'll have to check on that. Facebook changes its settings fairly regularly, so we have to try and keep up with that. Okay, coming up, we may have a bright comet. In fact, there was some discussion about a month ago. There would be 2 comets that would be so bright that they'd be visible in the daytime, and they would be gigantic and all this kind of stuff. One of the comets, which was supposed to basically loop very close to the sun and then come back, probably is not going to be visible. The sun-grazing comet that was supposed to come by and perhaps become very, very bright as the full moon or something like that. We've seen it with the James Webb Space Telescope. It's quite small. It's probably going to disintegrate as it approaches the sun. In fact, it's already starting to deteriorate. So Comet Pan-STARRS isn't just not going to be very good, unfortunately. Comet MAPS, on the other hand, which is another comet that was discovered by an automated acronym telescope name, might be a nice thing to see in the morning sky. And so we're just going to take a look at that. I keep pressing the wrong buttons here. Yeah, you're right, Ulrika. It was great when we had Mike moderating our chats and things like that, because he could go and look at trying to troubleshoot that while I was doing the show. But unfortunately, we don't have the as a not-for-profit, we can't put as many resources into the show as we did during COVID, and so it's just me. Let's see here. Where is our little comets? Okay. Yeah, we're just having a glitch here. So instead of that, we're going to move on to
cool space stuff.
There's a little bit of mic for you. Cool space stuff. This is a live view of the Artemis II rocket sitting on the launch pad at the Kennedy Space Center right now, 1 week away from blasting off on its trip around the moon. The crew arrives in the next day or so at Kennedy Space Center. They've been in quarantine for a week to make sure they don't get measles or a cold or something when they're way up in space. And they will be climbing into that capsule on the 31st of March, and the launch is scheduled for about 5:24 p.m. on April the 1st. And yeah, that's going to be the headline. April Fools, no April Fools joke. You can just tell what that is going to be, right? And for years, it will give the moon hoax folks lots of stuff to talk about, I'm sure. I kind of hope it gets delayed by a day just to get it off of April Fool's Day. But as we all know, Canadian astronaut Jeremy Hansen will be on board that spacecraft, the Orion spacecraft that will loop around the moon. Will have a 10-day mission up there. And where is our... There we go. And we will have the first Canadian going out to the distance of the moon, the first Canadian around the moon. This is all pretty exciting stuff, and we've been looking forward to it for years at this point. We've known that this was coming, and it's a week away. And I really hope that it goes off as planned and it doesn't get delayed anymore, because we're seeing all sorts of other changes happening in NASA in terms of their future moon missions and all the different things that they want to do. But luckily, Jeremy's mission, Artemis II, it was too far along for any changes to really even be considered. So it looks like we've got our Canadian flight around the moon. We just have to make it through another week without too much international chaos or whatever that might happen. And that'll be one of those moments that kids today, well, and adults today, will look back on and be inspired by, the fact that you don't have to go to the States. You don't have to do, Canada can be up there with the best of them. So really looking forward to Jeremy's flight, and we will be covering the launch live once they start the countdowns, and we'll come back whenever there happens to be a delay or things like that. We'll be covering the launch. The Artemis II flight, 9.5 days, takes off from the Earth, loops around the Earth so they can check out the spacecraft and make sure everything's working before they fire the big engine and take a 4-day trip out to the moon, loop around the moon once, and then take a 4-day trip back. During that time, they test out the engines, they test out the life support, they do some science experiments. I'm sure we're going to see some live conferences with the astronauts and things like that. And then they splash down in the Pacific Ocean near San Diego, and the boat goes and picks them up. And that's the mission. So we're looking forward to that. That's about the only thing that we know is going to happen, because NASA over the last week has changed literally everything else about their plans. Canada, of course, got our seats on the Artemis mission because we were building the Canadarm3, one of the robotic arms that we're famous for. It was going to go on the Gateway space station. Gateway was a space station like the International Space Station, but not around Earth. It would go around the moon. And the idea was it would go around the moon on this sort of long looping orbit. And so you could fly out to the Gateway and then just ride Gateway back to the moon and then go down to the moon and come back up to Gateway, kind of like having one of those rest stations on the highway before your final destination. And most of that was already built for the beginning parts. The European Space Agency was building a part, and NASA was building a part, and we're working on the Canadarm, and there was all sorts of international collaboration. That's all canceled. There will be no Gateway space station. NASA has decided that they're going to build their space station on the surface of the moon, a moon base instead. That was an idea that was kicked around a number of years ago, and it was turned out that it made more sense to make Gateway instead, and that was what happened. Now the pendulum has reversed. Interestingly, this means we're not giving Canadarm3 to NASA, which means they don't really owe us any seats on the Artemis missions in exchange. So what are we giving them for Jeremy's flight? It's kind of all up in the air, and for it to happen a week before, this happens, it's a lot of uncertainty, even more so than normal for what's going on down south right now. So space watchers are very keenly trying to figure out what's going on with NASA. They're making a lot of changes with not only the upcoming moon missions and the Gateway. They've added a new mission into the Artemis program, which was a good idea, but these things are supposed to start really, really quickly. And I really don't see how that's going to happen, given that the moon landers, the things that are supposed to, take people to the moon, starting next year haven't even been built or even concepted or even like they're not even, I mean, there's a couple of renderings like this picture that I'm showing you right now that's about the most detail that we know about these moon landings, moon landing spacecraft. It's very ambitious, shall we say. So moon landing, or Artemis II is going to go on as scheduled, it seems. Artemis III is a brand new mission where the moon landers will get tested out in Earth orbit. And I say moon landers because there's two of them. One is the SpaceX Starship human landing system, which is basically, imagine the Richardson building here in downtown Winnipeg, picking that up and then landing it on the moon, as opposed to the previous moon landers that were used like in the 60s, which were about the size of a VW van. Much more difficult to get down from the top of the Richardson building onto the surface of the moon too. So that's a little bit concerning. Then there's also the Blue Origin moon lander, which is even less well developed at this point. It's quite a bit smaller and quite a bit more stable, but we don't know anything about it. They're also chopping out some of the other things, the upper stage and things like that. And then here it's got Artemis 4, 5, 6, ... because they don't really know what they're going to do. And look, there's nice, pretty pictures of things and stuff, but none of it exists yet. And yet it's happening in 2028, which by my count is less than 2 years away. I guess to the end of 2028, so we'll say less than 3 years away. So to completely build a new moon program from scratch in 3 years is unprecedented, is a polite way to put it. So it's kind of hard to say what's going to happen with this whole space program. Certainly, the European Space Agency is not super happy about having now a space station module that they've built that is not going to get used, and an engine system for the Artemis space launch system that is not going to get used. What are they going to do with it? And Canada's got development into the Canadarm, Canadarm3 that's not going to get used. All the people working on Gateway. We'll have to see what happens. I kind of think this is a little bit of performance, because you throw out a bunch of changes and make everybody all uncertain, and then you release the rest of the information and it all starts to make sense and you look really, really smart. I suspect that's what's going on. We're gonna assume that that's what's going on, and that we're going to hear the rest of the information soon, and it will all make sense. Now we had a question here. Let's see. Where are we? Kevin. Oh, Kevin. Kevin and Kim out in Kingston. Nice to see you guys. This too will pass, hey? Like a kidney stone. Yeah. I certainly hope so. Gia's asking, and this is a question I've been trying to find the answer of. Would we be able to see Artemis in the sky like when the ISS flies over? So here's the bad news. When it is in orbit around the Earth, the only time that it will be visible from our latitude in Canada will be when it's at its farthest point in the orbit. So it will be very, very faint. So we will not easily be able to see it in the sky. There are some astronomers who are going to be using their telescopes to try and detect it as it flies out towards the moon, but there it will be like a very faint star, almost like just a moving satellite, very, very slowly, that you'd need a telescope to see. If it's clear, we're going to try, and if we succeed, we'll live stream it. But I think it's going to be a real challenge for this one. And then there was some thought that we might be able to see it out at the distance of the moon, but I just don't think that's possible. It's too small at that kind of distance. It just doesn't have enough brightness. However, we're going to try anyway. Let's see. Bob, when they can't even get the rocket off the ground, how do we get a base on the moon? That's a very good question, one that many people have been asking. And try asking it on the internet. You get a lot of very helpful answers from a lot of very helpful people who are big fans of the current system. And Ben asks, Starlink wants how many satellites? Oh yeah, so we didn't talk too much about this, but the Starlink satellites, which are made by SpaceX, there's so many of them up there right now. I think there's about 10,000 active ones right now. You can go outside and literally every couple of minutes, somewhere in the sky, there is a moving star about as bright as, a medium brightness star that is a satellite. And then sometimes there'll be a whole bunch of them all at once. They want to put up 1 million. So that's 1,000 times more than what we have now. And there are no laws preventing them. However, it's a really bad idea because of all the space junk risks and all of the things that we've talked about in the past. I don't want to get too bogged down here in it, and maybe we should do that for the next show, is talk a little bit more about the updates on the satellite constellations. But it is definitely one of those things that is concerning to astronomers, to people that want to be able to access space, to a lot of people. It's a very bad environmental move to put so much stuff up into space that things start crashing into each other. Because once a couple of satellites hit each other and they break into 1 million pieces each piece that's only this big is traveling at 25 times the speed of sound or whatever. It hits another thing, it breaks that into 1 million pieces, and those pieces all go off. And you get this cascading effect where suddenly, if you remember the movie Wall-E, the Disney movie with the little robot that lived on the planet and he was like cleaning up trash, the first scene of that is the Earth all covered with dead satellites. That was not an exaggeration. That's the potential outcome from this kind of thing. So it's definitely something that needs to be looked at. I know that there are a number of people that are doing petitions and things like that. But really, I think the scientific community needs to come together and present a plan to get around this, because it's just not a workable kind of situation. Okay, let's move. We sort of started with cool space stuff, and we're moving into less cool space stuff, and it only gets worse from here. That was going to be Gateway, with the Canadarm on the side here, right in there. And we were also building a moon rover, a little robotic moon rover that would go up there and do all sorts of science and help us work on robotics and telecommunication, things like that, so that you can start to do things like remote surgeries and robotic servicing of remote locations in the north and things like that. That got canceled. And it got canceled 2 days before the NASA announcement of the big changes for everything else. I'm not sure that they're linked. That's just when the budget came out for the Canadian Space Agency, and so it was announced that that wasn't going to be going there. And of course, there's lots of things to spend money on in Canada, and so I understand when they have to make difficult choices and things like that. I certainly think, though, that the turmoil in NASA has contributed a little bit to that, because Canada tends to just be partners with people. We're really good at some things. We're amazing at building satellites. Our RadarSat constellation is like one of the best early warning satellites in the world for looking at disaster relief and all sorts of things. We build great suborbital rockets that go up and then straight back down again. The one thing that we don't do is build our own rockets to put satellites in orbit. Well, apparently we're going to start doing that. And so things like the moon rover are being canceled to start developing what they call sovereign launch capability, actual rockets launching from Canada, probably out on the East Coast, to put satellites into orbit. Because if you can't depend on all of the other people that have rockets to give you a ride, or to be able to rent you space on their rockets, you can't really get your satellites up there. And satellites, I mean, even though satellites are basically integral to modern life nowadays. I mean, GPS is the obvious example, but all the forest fires that we had to deal with over the last number of summers, most of that gets tracked through satellites. Ice melting from the the Northwest Passage and things like that, icebergs, and ships that get in trouble. Yeah, it's all satellite based. Paul, yeah, woohoo, East Coast. Yeah, it's Nova Scotia is probably going to be the launch site. I know a few people that live right around there that aren't super happy about it, but I think it can be done properly. I mean, you don't have to be SpaceX and just like build a giant rocket base next to an endangered species wildlife refuge and kick a bunch of people out of their houses. You can do it properly. We're Canadian. We're gonna get this right, right? Anyway, lots of changes in the cool space stuff category. Expect lots of updates. Our next show, which will be the last Thursday in April, will hopefully be a recap of the amazing moon mission of Jeremy Hansen, as well as the resolution of all of these questions that we're left hanging with tonight. So next show, everything's all going to be good. It's going to be like super duper cool space stuff. I hope. Anyway, make sure that you get out and spend some time under the stars. I mean, it's easy to get wrapped up in internet chat and bad news and all sorts of things going on. It's really easy to worry about things and make yourself sick. Time spent under the stars helps with that. It is the best and the least expensive therapy that you can have. There's a relaxation of just being out in nature and comprehending the infinite. Suddenly, we're just little specks. We are not as big as all of that. I mean, I don't mean to minimize us, but there's a bigger universe and we can see so much of it from our backyard. That's really cool. Go out and contemplate some of those bigger questions, spend some time under the stars, and we will see you here next time at Dome and Home. Remember, you can always reach us. Where's my little, there we go. You can always reach us in the various places here. And you can also come down to the planetarium. Next week, it's spring break. So we are going to be full of spring breakers. There's all sorts of great activities going on. Scavenger hunts in the museum, cool stuff in the science gallery, planetarium shows. And then, let's see, we also got First Friday coming up next week. The first Friday of the month in the evening from 4 till 9 o'clock is free admission in the planetarium, science gallery, museum. So yeah, come check us out. Hopefully we'll see you down there. Enjoy the evening, and we will see you next month. Sorry, got ahead of myself. We will see you next month on Dome at Home. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.